And I'm going to turn it over to Miss Janie Payne, who is the president of our SECAC board.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and I'm so excited at the participation we're having this evening. I am Janie Payne, and I'm the SECAC board chair. I'm also the proud grandparent of Leah, who has been in Prince George's County Public Schools since the Infants and Toddlers program. She's 17 now and on the autism spectrum. I'm delighted to welcome you here, and I wanted to say, for those of you who may not be familiar with SECAC, our role is working collaboratively with Prince George's County Public Schools to bring about positive change for our students with disabilities. And in doing that, one of the most important things that we do is make sure that we hear the voices and listen to the voices of our parents and caregivers. And in fact, by listening to those voices, it really has brought us here this evening. So I want to acknowledge the County Board of Education, but before I do, I'm very pleased to announce that we have a couple of board members who are here, and if they would, just share with you, maybe by raising their hand, who they are. We have board member Pamela Boozer Struthers, who is from District 3. We also have board member Robin Brown, who is from District 5. And we have Dr. Sheila Jackson, who is the Director of Family and Community Partnerships and Outreach. Here is the list of all of our board members, just for your information, and we want to acknowledge each of our board members, and certainly Secretary Treasurer and Superintendent of Schools, Miller House II. I also want to acknowledge our SECAC Executive Board. We have Vice Chair Jamie Amberson Como. We have co-secretaries, Frederica Fredri and Genevieve Janai. We have our treasurer, who is Jen Gagler. Our outreach committee, the chair is A.O. Bello. We have Samantha Dawson Williams, who I know is here and responsible for communications, and Sarah Whalen, who is our website and listserv manager. Our partners in Prince George's County Public Schools, we work with Trinell Bowman, who is the Associate Superintendent for the Department of Special Education, and Trinell will be sharing a lot with us this evening. Karen Andrews, the Director of Special Education. Michelle Blakely Toggle, the Coordinating Supervisor, Instructional Supports, Assessment, and Accountability, and Beth Hare, Instructional Specialist. So those are people who we work with very often and serve as our advisors. And I should not have left off Yvette Young, who is our social worker. Now, our agenda for this evening is, first of all, I have done the welcome. We're going to get into the real meat of this evening, which is to provide a follow-up from our October town hall. I think, as most of you know, this is the second of 4 town halls that we'll be giving. We're going to hear from Prince George's County Public Schools, who are going to provide updates regarding the recommendations in the action plan that they have been implementing and working on and monitoring that really came as a result of parent recommendations. And then engage, we have David Reese and his staff who are here that are going to be facilitating with us today and helping us to really engage in the town hall, and then sort of share with you some of the Department of Special Education resources and next steps. So Trinell, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Janie. At this time, I'm asking Marcy Torsion to come forward, and she's going to recap the October Town Hall meeting with you.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be back with you. I just want to give a quick recap of our October Town Hall meeting. We did send out a survey after the meeting, and we wanted to provide you with some key takeaways from that first session. We asked a series of questions, and here are your results on this slide of kind of the quantitative or numerical information. 23 out of 41 felt the session was relevant to their needs. 21 felt that the Zoom format worked well. 32 felt like the date and time worked well. And 19 felt that the facilitators and presenters were well prepared. We will be sharing a copy of this presentation with you after the town hall. And here on this slide, you can find a link to the exact responses to those questions. Some highlights of the feedback: our participants requested answers to questions and responses to parents and caregivers. They also requested information on how this becomes an opportunity to learn and see some actionable steps for change, and more information on some innovative ways to currently meet student needs. We had some great suggestions for future topics, information on the continuum of placements in Appendix A, on the differences between the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and Section 504, and then information on how school leadership personnel are managing and supporting the broader systemic issues and challenges with the aid of central leadership. My favorite part of the survey was that we asked folks to tell us about a win your child had this year. And these are just a few highlights. Performing on and above grade level because the parent is working with the school system. We had one that reported that their student was sitting down and able to access learning, joining the drama club, and having a part in Charlotte's Web in spite of the speech challenges. No meltdowns at school, and allowed his social standing to improve amongst his peers, and learning to imagine her emotions. So it was great to hear those wins that students had across the year from our participants. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Trinell, who is going to talk about updates regarding recommendations through parent advocacy from spring of 2024.
Thank you so much, Marcy. So as Ms. Payne talked about earlier, that in the spring, through parent advocacy, there were a list of recommendations that came through in the spring to the Board of Education. In addition to those recommendations, our SECAC board reviewed them and actually affirmed those recommendations and provided some additional context and recommendations to our Board of Education. So what you see as Marcy is advancing the slides are the list of recommendations, Prince George's County responses, and a status update. You'll see that some of the action items are ongoing, some are in process, and some have been completed. So we are happy about the progress that we are making about the recommendations. And throughout the school year, we will continue to update you on where we stand with those recommendations that are either still ongoing or in progress. I'm going to turn it over to David Reese, Dr. David Reese, who is our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging.
Thank you, Trinell, and good evening again, everyone. I'm David Reese from our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Belonging, as Trinell just said. So happy that we have so many participants in the room this evening. And I'm going to slow down just a little bit so that our interpreter can interpret without having to do speedy work. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the structure of our town hall meeting 2, which is going to be different than the first one, hopefully more collaborative, and we're going to be focused on some results and seeing some change happen in PGCPS. Can you go back? There you go. All right, so tonight's town hall meeting, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail momentarily, is going to focus on a pretty high leverage space for the Department of Special Education, which is the adherence to IEP requirements. And so the IEP meeting, the IEP process will be the focus of our conversation this evening. So I really do want each of you to take some time to think about your recent experiences with the IEP process as you've been advocating for your child, your student, and what IEP meetings have looked like for you recently as you've engaged with PGCPS staff. During our conversation tonight, you have opportunities to share those experiences so that we can hear directly about the good things that have happened and the things that we need to improve to make better. And then we're going to have a really nice protocol where we kind of figure out what we're going to do next. So this town hall, again, will be a collaborative work session where we're going to get recommendations from you and use those strategies to move the system forward. We have designated note takers who will be taking notes, and it's also being recorded so that the SECAC board and PGCPS can use that information moving forward. And if you have any recommendations that you want to make, you can always use the email address here, jhflc.familysupport@pgcps.org, and someone will respond to your email there. So following the first town hall meeting, the Department of Special Education reviewed a lot of the feedback that you all shared during the town hall and shared the survey after the town hall, and we received lots of information and calls to the Family Support Center this year, and people have been responsive. The Department of Special Education identified 2 areas that really bubbled up to the top as areas that you all wanted to focus on. One was adherence to the student's IEP, and then the other one connected to social emotional concerns. So tonight's town hall is going to focus on the first, which is the IEP meeting and that process. And then moving forward in the future town hall, we'll focus on socio emotional concerns. We have a couple ground norms that we want to set. So there'll be opportunities for us all to engage in the chat and then have out loud conversation. We'll come off of mute and share our experiences. And we ask that you use titles as opposed to people's individual names. So the principal of the school that, and you can name the school, but we ask that you not say the person's name. And then we want to make sure that we refrain from vulgar or disrespectful remarks, inappropriate language, or making personal attacks against individual people, even though we can speak about, our experiences that have not been so positive. We want to refrain from personal attacks. And if we feel like in the moment that people are not following the norms, we will give a gentle reminder that we want to make sure that we adhere to the norms, and then we might remove people from the meeting if that's necessary, but that won't be. Just wanted to say that out loud so that we were all clear. Again, we want you to refrain from discussing the specifics of your student's case so that we want to make sure that we're protecting the privacy of students in this experience. So you can talk about things in a general sense, but try not to give out information that's personally identifiable. And we appreciate your adherence to these guidelines so that we can have a really smooth and collaborative space together this evening. Okay, so this is called a problem of practice consultancy model. And I just want to spend a couple moments talking about how we're going to frame the conversation this evening. So the problem of practice consultancy will help the PGCPS staff, who you all see here today with the PGCPS backgrounds, expand our thinking and get new ideas about how to address the IEP meeting process and the IEP adherence to IEP requirements. And we really want to leverage the experiences and knowledge of you all in the room tonight. And so we're looking forward to tapping into your expertise. So this is how it works. For a few moments, members of the special education department will share their understanding of dilemma that we are facing as a system with adherence to IEP requirements. They'll speak very truthfully around some of the challenges that we're facing, and then they'll provide the overview of that dilemma. We will then allow you all about 20 minutes to ask specific questions that you have to the team members about that dilemma. And so I'll ask you to keep your questions pretty succinct, to try not to take up more than a minute to ask the question so that the team can respond, and we will get as many questions answered in that time as possible. We can put things in the chat as well as come off of mute. Then we'll move to my favorite part of the protocol, which is when the PGCPS team will move to silence and say nothing. And then we'll hear from you all around the suggestions that you have about how to improve upon the IEP meeting requirements and adherence to them as you share your experiences that you've had in PGCPS. And that'll be a nice time for you all to ideate, share your truths, speak out loud, and then the PGCPS team will listen and really absorb what you are hearing. and then we'll move to some reflections and next steps at the end of the conversation. So the big question that we have to frame the dilemma before I turn it back over to Trinell and the team is, what strategies should PGCPS consider to address adherence to implementing IEPs? Now, we know that some of you have had some pretty good experiences with adhering to IEPs, and some of your experiences have some issues that we need to resolve as a system. So this is the framing question. What strategies should PGCPS consider to address adherence to implementing IEPs? So we're going to turn it over to the team to share their view of the dilemma. And then after that, you all be able to ask your questions, and then we'll get the conversation flowing.
Thanks so much. So in the overview of the dilemma, who will present information to you this evening will be Mr. Keith Markson, who serves as our compliance supervisor. We also have joining us is Mr. Keith Blackston, who serves as our coordinating supervisor for support programs, related services, non-public, and child find. And then we also have joining us is Miss Michelle Tucker, who supports our comprehensive coordinating early intervening services that really supports social, emotional, and behavior supports of our students, as well as disproportionality strategies in our system. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Markson.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. I will begin with a review of special education complaint data from school year 2023 through 2024. And from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, PGCPS received the following complaints. Those included 80 MSD or Maryland State Department of Education complaints, 9 Office of Civil Rights complaints, and 42 due process complaints and mediation filings. Additionally, we also logged in 504 calls to the Special Education Family Support Center. So as you see on this slide, for MSD complaints, 72 were with violations, 5 were without violations, 3 were withdrawn by the parent, and 2, the case was still open. We did want to note that 11 of these complaints were from the same filer, just to give you some context as to the number of complaints that we've received. On to the next slide, the special education complaint data from school year 2024 to 2025 as of December 11, 2024, right before we went out on the winter break, we had received the following complaints. 49 MSDE complaints, 19 of those were from the same filer, 2 Office of Civil Rights complaints, 1 investigation is pending, 1 mediation was pending, and 28 due process complaints and mediation filings. 208 calls have been logged to the Special Education Family Support Center. For our state and district driven data, we have general supervision monitoring for continuous results approach, starting with the Maryland State Department of Education at the top, which is our programmatic and fiscal monitoring. Then we move into our PGCPS general supervision for programmatic, and then our PGCPS general supervision for fiscal. As you can see under our programmatic approach, there was a monthly special education checklist and a special education monitoring plan. For our fiscal general supervision, there are special education general funds and special education restricted funds, which we will get into a little bit more on the following slides. Looking at number 1, the Maryland State Department of Education monitoring process. These include a special education policy review, IEP reviews, alternative education framework reviews, physical restraint reviews, related services record reviews, a case study, and state performance plan / annual performance report, or SPP / APR indicators. There is a link here at the bottom of this slide that takes you to the MSDE monitoring process descriptions for more information about this process. On to the next slide for our general supervision monitoring process for PGCPS. So again, we have an MSDE mandated monitoring process, but on top of that, we have our own PGCPS general supervision monitoring process. That includes alternative instructional framework and alternative assessments, LRE, least restrictive environment monitoring, emotional disability identification, physical restraint for public schools, and also for our non-public schools, functional behavior assessment, FBA, and BIP behavior intervention plan, related services monitoring, indicator 11 or child find, text-to-speech accommodation monitoring, indicator 13, which is secondary transitions, and IEP reviews at each school, including non-public schools. And you can see at the link here at the bottom of this slide, it includes our monitoring process descriptions for additional information. So again, we have both an MSDE process and our own internal monitoring process. For the school level, we have the Special Education Accountability Checklist, and the description of that component is contained on the right of this slide. So each month, the Special Education Instructional Specialists, or SEIS, who are our central office specialists, meet with principals / the principal's designee to review special education data, topics, and the monthly special education checklist. A rolling agenda is kept and used to document the status of checklist items and follow-up actions. The rolling agenda also captures any concerns for the school that require additional feedback from other team members or leadership. The principal or principal's designee signs off on the checklist each month, and so this ensures accountability between our central office, our special education processes, and with the schools that we serve. Moving on to the next slide, business intelligence reports. These are reports that have been developed to provide important data to assist special education school leaders and IEP service providers with maintaining compliance and performance indicators. The BI reports are also used by district special education leadership to monitor compliance and performance indicators, and monthly reports are sent to principals, instructional directors, and associate superintendents. There is a link to a greater description on this slide as well.
Review of the IEP process can take place on two planes. One, a procedural plane, and two, gosh, I'm blanking for a second. Clip for me one second, David. Yeah, a substantive plane. I'm sorry, a substantive plane. So whenever we look at the IEP, whether it's at a local level or whether it's at a state level, we want to make sure that that the processes and procedures have been followed. And when we think about those processes and procedures, they're associated with things like timelines, things like meeting composition. We want to be certain that parents have been invited and all relevant stakeholders at the schoolhouse have been invited as well. We also want to make sure that those timelines include having parents have all relevant information within 5 business days prior to the scheduled IEP team meeting. In addition, when we look at substantive violations, those violations include those elements of the IEP, such as service delivery. When you think about it, you can think in terms of specially designed instruction that would take place. So we, once again, can look at violations on a procedural or a substantive plane.
When we look at some of our challenges within special education, we identified 5 big rocks. One, of course, being special education vacancies. Of course, those vacancies and that thinking about the shortage of staff has impacted our systems and structures to monitor. So even though we have the systems and structures there, not necessarily having the staff to implement, which is then leading to certain compliance and parent engagement concerns. When we look at the staff that we do have, there have been limited opportunities in order to provide professional learning to them, both at the beginning of the school year, because there are so many priorities in that short amount of time when teachers are brought back pre-service, in addition to not having the opportunity to be able to train staff during the day. And with the increase, and this just happens to come kind of in my wheelhouse when we start thinking about behavior and social emotional needs, that some of that training we definitely need to give staff to build capacity is to be able to support students that have an increase in interfering behaviors and social emotional needs. And when we look at all of the first 4 kind of bullets we talk about, those compound are reasons for us losing teachers, either to them taking off from work or being away from work or just not being in the building. And when we look at the next slide, you'll see some of the things that we've done to try to address some of the challenges we have, from the staffing area or big rock with our partnerships, developing vacancy plans, even looking to hire contracted service providers, whether it's the behavior technicians, contracted teachers, and service providers, using the staff that we have in central office to go try to cover some of the work that would be done by the staff if we didn't have the vacancies, continuing and seeking out additional partnerships with universities, bringing in interns, being a part of mentoring programs so that maybe we can get them fresh off of the graduation stage, as well as, engaging in some staffing problem of practice situations similar to what we're going through now, with trying to figure out how can we meet the needs, knowing that this is nationwide in terms of teacher shortages. The different areas we looked at in supporting social, emotional, and behavioral needs. We have a comprehensive response team from central office that goes out to support schools with specific cases. We have monthly meetings, and we have training after school to try to build capacity of staff. We have social workers. We are using social worker interns from the university, as well as expanding partnerships with folks in the community to additionally provide those supports that students need. And then that ongoing professional learning from being a part of principal meetings to working with our special education chairpersons. We have after school trainings. We have trainings on the we have exploring trainings on the weekend. We have open office hours for folks to jump on and consult with us, as well as having a tiered approach to our coaching and professional development. And when all else fails, we put it electronically so that if they can't stay with us after school, we can't get them during the day, then they have opportunity to engage in some self-paced professional learning.
Thank you so much, team, for putting out your understanding of the dilemmas that we are facing as a system. I want to take a pause for a moment just to reorient folks who are just joining us to what's happening tonight. So this is our second SECAC town hall. So thank you for joining. We're doing a consultancy model where we are having a conversation focusing on adherence to IEP requirements in PGCPS. So that's the focus of our conversation today. We're about to move into the 20-minute segment where everyone gets to ask questions to the team, and the team will respond as quickly and succinctly as possible to get as many voices in the room as possible. Then we'll move to the section where the PGCPS team will be quiet, and I will try to facilitate a dialogue with everyone else in the room where you can share your reactions to what you heard and offer your best thinking as to what we can do to get better in the system. I do want to acknowledge that as I look through the list, we have several school building principals who are here. So thank you to those, and I can't call them out by name. I don't want to miss anybody, but we have several PGCPS principals who are right here in the space with you. So thanks to my colleagues for being here with us today. I want to do a quick model of a type of question or two you might ask to the team. One question could be, for example, how do you ensure that a child's IEP is implemented when there is a vacancy? Since we're hearing about these vacancies and we know that IEPs are legally binding documents, how do you ensure that they are implemented? And then I see several questions that people have already put into the chat, which are great questions for the team to respond to, like, what training are given to paras and are they invited to IEP meetings? So I'll start off with those two questions, and then we will take questions from people who either raise their hand or put them in the chat.
All right, so during this segment, we'll be answering those questions as Mr. Reese has indicated. So typically paraprofessionals do not attend IEP meetings. They are not a required team member under IDEA. IDEA does specify who is expected to attend our meetings during those times. And we can provide you with those details in terms of who are your required attendees, such as general educators, special educators. If we're interpreting results from assessments, we have to have the qualified examiner to share those results. So it really depends on the context of what the IEP meeting is. And then can you give the second question, Mr. Reese?
Absolutely. How do you ensure that a child's IEP is implemented when there is a vacancy?
Okay, so I'm going to yield that question to Mr. Blackston to answer.
Good evening. Whenever there is a vacancy, that is an incredible challenge for us. What we know is that there are specific have-tos or structures that are put in place by the Maryland State Department of Education. The first thing they require us to do is to show progress or show effort in attempting to fill that particular vacancy. Next, we should have a discussion or a meeting to review the student's IEP, review the specific needs associated with that IEP, not only to include goals and objectives, but also to include any accommodations or modifications. And then at that point, we are to put in place a particular measure that allows students to continue to make progress on those IEP goals, as well as have access to the general education curriculum. And that's inclusive of whether it is a teacher vacancy or a related services vacancy. Those school teams should have those measures that are put in place reviewed, and that information should also be shared with the families and the parents. So you should be notified that there's a vacancy. You should be notified of what measures are put in place to address that specific vacancy. And then at such time, on a quarterly basis, we should review the progress associated with that absence and make a determination what impact may have occurred based on that particular vacancy. We will then make adjustments based on that particular information that's shared in attempt to support that student during that window. So those are some of those elements that are put in place to support students during times of vacancies.
Thank you so much, Keith Blackson. So what I'll do now is try to toggle back and forth between people who are raising their hands and what I see in the chat. So just in case you're not aware, if you see the react button that has the hearts on it that's not filled in, if you click on that, there's a raise your hand feature, a yellow hand in most cases, that will allow you to get into the queue like Sierra is. So Sierra, you may come off mute and ask your question.
Good evening. Thank you for that response, Mr. Blackson. So what would you advise parents to do if that plan that you just described is not occurring, if the parents were not notified that services were not being provided and there is no plan in place and has not been a plan in place for an extended amount of time?
On two accounts. One, I'd apologize for you not receiving that notification and being a part of the discussion around the plan. Second, I would suggest that you can do one of two things. You can request an IPT meeting at the local school to address this particular concern, but you can also leave your name and information in the chat, and we can have either Mr. Marston or either one of our special education instructional specialists to reach out to you to begin to address that particular concern at a local level.
Thank you so much. And I have a question in the chat, and we'll get to you next, Derek Clayton from Sandy Moulton. What is PGCPS doing about co-taught classes having paraprofessionals that cannot help the students in subject matter, for example, math?
So one of the things that we should be doing is our paraprofessionals are really there to reinforce what's already been taught by the classroom teacher. So sometimes we use our paraprofessionals for small group instruction to reinforce what's already been taught or to work one-on-one with a student. Any work that a paraprofessional does with our students should be overseen by the teacher. And there should also be an opportunity to train the para on any specific methodology and the approach of how they're working with students. And that is something that we do expect that we, as we think about collaborative planning and planning for the lesson in mind, one of the things that we do in our training with our principals as well as with our teachers is to think about the role of the support staff in implementing specially designed instruction. So what are the knowledge and skills and training that is needed, particularly based on a student's individualized IEP. And so the para could be in a co-taught class for a variety of reasons, supporting a small group of students or even supporting one student. But they should not be solely responsible for teaching the content. They really are reinforcing some of those skills. If there's a specific case for your child, I'll again fill out the form and we can follow up specifically about your child's case.
All right, thank you so much. And Derek Clayton, you have a couple questions in the chat, but please come off of mute and give voice to them.
Sure. I don't know exactly who's all in this forum, so maybe I probably don't want to ask it. Is it outside people as well as just PGCS employees?
We have lots of family members who are,
Oh, yeah, no, well, then don't, yeah,
Okay.
somebody can see it in the chat and probably, get to me, I guess. I don't want to, I wasn't aware of that, but it's okay.
Awesome. Well, first of all, welcome to PGCPS, and we'll make sure that someone responds to you and the clear questions that you have around the re-evals for IEP, the IEP process, and how it's going to affect you. So Trinell, who is a team member who we will have get in contact with him?
So, Mr. Clayton, if you fill out that form, you will be directed to the appropriate team member to support you with your questions and to address those questions. So you'll have a follow-up. Thank you. And there are additional team members from the Department of Special Education that were not introduced, as well as additional principals that are joining us, as well as other PGCPS staff. So thank you all for being here.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question. There were a few questions about dedicated aides that showed up in a few places. And the question is, what are we doing about the lack of dedicated aides? Something, I'm sorry, just moved. It's mostly due to the fact that dedicated aides can't get benefits or work if their child is sick. And the questioner is asking about making this a full-time position with benefits. And what are we doing from a human resources perspective?
So thank you for that question. We continue to work collaboratively with our Division of Human Resources as it relates to just hiring, recruitment of our employees throughout the system. We definitely know that our dedicated aides are considered temporary employees, and that recommendation that you're making is something that we definitely will continue to take forward. Those are discussions that we've had. Karen Andrews has actually worked with our Division of Human Resources and other team members to think about some recommendations that we want to make, and that is one thing that has come to the front around the pay, the compensation, as well as the lack of benefits that our dedicated aides do have. So that is something that definitely will go forward as a result of your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I do see a question from Tanisha Hawkins in the chat that was responded to, but I definitely want to make sure it's elevated for the room. And that is, who do I contact if the supplementary aids and services listed on the IEP are not being followed?
So I'll yield that to Mr. Marson to answer.
And so if there is a concern about IEP implementation or supplemental aids and services that are being followed or not being followed, you would want to start with the school's principal to let them know that that is a concern that you have as a parent, that the IEP is not being implemented on some form or fashion. We also do have resources in central office. I see that Ms. Whalen has put information regarding our Family Support Center. We also do have members from our Family Support Center here on this call as well. And so I would also encourage everyone to use our Family Support Center. That is a great support. In central office, there is different layers of support that the Family Support Center can also put you into contact with regarding those concerns. I also field a lot of those concerns from parents, and certainly we would look into it from the central office level regarding the implementation or suspected lack of implementation of an IEP.
Thank you so much. The next question I want to, and feel free to raise your hand if you want to come up and ask your own question. But this is about the ISEA. So first, what is an ISEA? And then is it appropriate to have them being in charge of a first grade special education class?
So our itinerant special education assistants are considered support staff that support students with disabilities throughout our district in a variety of ways. And so we do have situations in which an ISEA or even a paraprofessional could be serving as a long-term sub in a classroom due to our special education vacancies. So it really depends on the skill set of that individual. The principal ultimately determines if that's an appropriate person that can serve as a long-term sub. For a classroom, there's a lot of decision-making that goes into that from the principal perspective. If the principal does make that determination, The principal also will ensure that someone is overseeing the work of that long-term sub, like any long-term sub in our district, in terms of lesson planning, collaborative planning, planning for the students. The work does have to be overseen by a certified individual. And so that is something that we do work on because of our vacancies and the high number of them. We definitely have situations where that is occurring in our district. So they could serve depending, again, on the judgment of the principal and the decision of the principal if it's appropriate.
All right, and this is, and so I really appreciate your answer, Trinell. And this question is from Rachel Doyle, and there's another corresponding question in the chat that I'm going to follow up with. And it's about how we treat our students with disabilities in PGCPS. So the question is, what is PGCPS doing to ensure that our principals know certain basic rules that tend to affect special education students more? For example, there are times when principals are sending children home for a part of the day and refusing to document it as a suspension. So this is about a question about principal professional learning and then accountability for not doing right by kids in an instance like this.
So when those situations are brought to our attention, we do investigate them. The student rights and responsibilities and the disciplinary responses are in our student rights and responsibility handbook. So we do work collaboratively with student services to determine if decisions are made in accordance with that administrative procedure. If we find that they are not made in accordance with that administrative procedure, we do share that information back with the school team. We may share that information with the area office depending on the gravity of the situation. We're very clear in Prince George's County that if a student is removed from school, it could be removed for medical reasons where the nurse is calling, right, to remove the student because of medical concerns, and maybe the student needs immediate medical attention or they have a fever, etc. If they're removed for discipline or behavior, we must have that documented through a suspension form. So we're very clear in our district around those procedures. If that happens, we do again investigate that. We may have to hold an IEP impact meeting if the student has been removed. And again, we do share our findings with the area office. The area office is the office that oversees our principals. Sometimes it may be a lack of understanding of our administrative procedures. So sometimes there's a recalibration of training that we do at the school. Our principals don't intentionally set out to break our administrative procedures, but sometimes there are some nuances, and we do provide systemic training at principals meetings around kind of what are our top findings around special ed implementation. We do train them on disciplinary procedures as it aligns to the student rights and responsibilities. For our elementary principals and K-8 principals in charter school, we do train them on the pre-K to second grade suspension. So if anything comes to our attention, again, we do investigate that. We do follow up. There may be mandatory training that has to occur at the school level, and then there may be some follow-up that has to occur between the area office, the instructional director, who then supervises the principal. So there are follow-up actions we do take when that happens.
Okay, and I want to bring up another question. There are a lot of them coming in before I ask our member with the raised hand to speak. And there was and this probably does relate to, this relates to access for all students in PGCPS. And there was a comment around students with disabilities often being excluded from field trips and extracurricular activities, which are really, really important for a well-rounded school experience. Can we speak to any of our team members, speak to work that's happening to be more inclusive, and how are we addressing issues when they're raised about this topic?
So I did say the first thing I would say is if you are aware of any exclusionary practices that are occurring, if you could please email me that right away, because that is something that definitely needs to be addressed with the school. We do have an administrative procedure in our district around field trips and extracurricular activities. I'm going to ask Mr. Blackson to just give an example of what we do for students who are in extracurricular activities that may require certain accommodations and support. from his perspective. So, Mr. Blackson, can you talk a little bit about the expectations we have for students who are with disabilities who may participate in field trips and extracurricular activities?
Sure, and if you guys will indulge me, I can give a couple anecdotals or some ideas about what we might do. We do ensure that students who have specific needs that may need to be accommodated in extracurricular activities, or as Associate Bowman indicated, field trips do take place. We have some students who may have, you know, the related service of a private duty nurse, or we might have some students who may have have hearing impairments, who might require the support of an interpreter, who do participate in clubs, who do participate in field trips, and do receive that accommodation during that window. I think that it becomes imperative to, one, be very aware of what activities are taking place at your child's school. I think that encourage, if this is a child who, let's say, is at a high school level, who can talk about the things that they want to do, or even at a middle and elementary school, who can convey those activities that they'd like to participate in, have them, as well as yourself, advocate in advance that these are some activities that they'd like to participate. Have the school team gather to have some discussions about what the specific needs may be in that particular environment. So what's the ask of the field trip? What's the ask of the extracurricular activity? And what are the specific needs that are necessary in order for the student to access those elements? Once those things are determined, then as a group, families as well as the school team and student can collaborate to ensure that those things are in place. There are times when, if there are certain elements, like I indicated before, if there are interpreters that are required, or if there are other elements that are required that might require additional support from the central office with those teams to ensure that they're in place, then that does take place. So those are just a couple of examples on that scale. I even know that there have been instances where we've had individuals who, say, participate in not just extracurricular activities, but they might participate in interscholastic activities and might require certain accommodations to participate on, say, an interscholastic team. And that has definitely occurred within our county.
Thank you so much, Keith. And if I don't say your name correctly, I apologize. Felucia Da Silva has a hand raised.
Very much for calling me. My name is Felicia Da Silva. I'm a student in the special education department. I'm so sure Ms. Trinell Bowman will remember my son's case. He got an admission into Imagine Lincoln Charter, and it was, I'm sorry to use this word, it was booted out then. I think we have a couple of meetings. They said, oh, the teacher initially started with, she already has 4 autistic kids in her class. She can't take another. It was a whole lot of mess around that time. We even compromised, like, okay, they wanted him to go to another school. Meanwhile, we didn't have any knowledge about all of, like, okay, you can get an advocate, or they should provide an aid for him to be able, because it's not, it's just that it's non-verbal a lot. Then going to another school, it was more like a student that was on honor roll when he was in 3rd grade, everything capsided. It was a whole lot of lengthy violations, the state findings with the PG County. As I'm talking right now, as of last week, we sent a couple of emails, and I know Ms. Bosmo was copied, and there quite a number of personnel were copied. It was falsified documentation in the system. It doesn't tally with the school, no reports. I mean, it was traumatizing for us, even for our son. Now the county was expected to have come up with something for Glendale Elementary before him going to middle school. They were given deadline of December 15. Nothing was done.
Okay.
PG County was given deadline for January 15. Not until we had to follow up again with the state, because the report of the finding came like, okay, these all violations were not denied. We are now expecting to have a meeting first week of February. I mean, cases like this was what really made me join this meeting, because it got to a point that some people were advising, like, no, you have to leave PG County. Even if you send out, we had one person tell us, like, even if you send an email, you copy the White House, nothing will come positive. His education has been affected badly, despite we'll offer to do something as parents. I mean, what do you have to do about cases like this? These are kids with bright future. For someone that says, oh, he wants to be an astronaut. He always says that. He has the highest scores in math. Now everything has dropped. Whatever it is that he's getting, the sense work, his classwork home for us to do, even in the new school, and he's already in middle school. It's heart-wrenching. It's heartbreaking for us as parents. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing your story and your concern. That was a lot. So thank you for sharing it. I don't have a direct response. And it was a very specific situation with a student. Trinell, who'll be reaching out to Ms. Da Silva?
Yes, I'm gonna ask her to follow up
Okay.
with the form just to make sure that we have the latest information of concerns, and then we'll be reaching out to her.
Great. So we are just about at our 20 minutes for the question and answer part of the process. And remember, our focus is really on the IEP process and how to elevate that and make it better in PGCPS. But we also understand that parents come to spaces where there are a lot of reasons why people are here. So I'm noticing there are a lot of comments in the chat that require a response that's probably more nuanced than what we can do in this space right now. And so I want to remind people to fill out the form where applicable, and then we'll make sure that someone gets back to you. We're now moving into the part of the 20 minutes of the conversation where the floor will be open for people to share their thinking about how PGCPS can best rectify the dilemma that the team laid out. And you all heard some questions and answers connected to the IEP process and adhering to requirements. So I want to ask that anybody who shares really try to stay targeted on that specific objective. And if you have other issues that you want to discuss, please fill out the form, or you can actually write those things in the chat so that we can make sure that we can connect back with you. So at this point, we're going to move to the group discussion and recommendations part of the conversation. And I think Shakita Perry is going to start us off.
Hello, hi. I just wanted to say, you said to rectify things that have been going wrong. I honestly feel like that y'all should have like a talk with teachers and principals of like what's their why and what they do. Because like from personal experience, I have noticed like that they say things like, we don't have the resources or this and that. But I feel like that honestly, like nobody ever gonna have all the resources that they want. But I just want them to have like an open mind and an open heart to like at least try something that they can do. Like I've been having like a lot of issues with that. Like, okay, y'all don't have the resources to do this and that. So what can you do to support my child? I feel like honestly they just give up, and like I just wish that they was like taught different resources, like go through a training to support children with behavioral problems, because it seems like that's the main issue that's going on.
Thank you so much. So just to remind everyone that the team will not be responding directly. This is the
Yeah.
this is the group's time to kind of respond to what you hear Shakita Perry saying or offer your own thoughts. And Shakita, thank you so much for pushing us on thinking about mindset of all educators and what can we do, as opposed to thinking about what can't happen and resources we don't have. Corey Smith.
Good evening. Thank you so much for hosting this space. We appreciate it. I would like to encourage PGCPS to look into more neuroaffirming practices and trainings for our staff and for our teachers. And, we rely heavily on the FBAs to identify, the functions of the behavior and the root cause, right? But then a lot of the practices that we put in place or that are put in place on our students are focused around compliance or focused around reactive responses to their behaviors, as opposed to a true understanding of what is the root cause, what is causing the behavior to begin with, and what do we need to do to address the environment to help that child from being from reducing the stimulations, right? Or reducing the demands at the moment. So as opposed to working to fix the behavior or teach a child to act in a quote unquote neurotypical way, we need to embrace our neurodiverse students and support them in affirming ways. So
Thank you, Corey Smith and Pamela Talley.
Good evening. One of the things that I'd like to mention in terms of knowledge and training is something that I've been sharing a lot for quite a few years, and I'll keep beating the drum, but I think that we should really consider micro-credentialing for special education chairs. I really think that that will go a long way in helping students and families with that advanced knowledge and training. So I've been sounding off both when I can at the local level and especially at the state level. So thank you. That's my
I want to ask you a follow-up question then, since I
Yes.
want to give you a little bit more space. So when you talk about micro-credentialing, can you say a little bit more to everyone in the room around what that looks like?
I think that, so first of all, I think that the knowledge base can be different in different schools at the schoolhouse level. And I think that we kind of need to support those who may need a little bit more knowledge base about certain areas. So I don't want to suggest that it's going bad everywhere, but we do know that there are some challenges in certain pockets, and requiring everyone in that particular role to have the same knowledge base, I think, and so that we are aligning our practices and policies across the board a little bit more equity, and that everyone has more of this, of all the information that they need to support students and families.
Thank you so much. And I saw that Corey Smith got some love in the chat, and Pamela Talley, I'm sending you love for that really nice explanation around something we can potentially consider doing. And Alicia Baines, and then Fiona Walker.
Hello. I like to recommend parents volunteering in the compliance office. And yeah, I think that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing it. And Fiona Walker.
Thank you. Good evening. My recommendation, I agree with Ms. Pamela. It takes a lot of education and time to learn the IEP process, to keep folders and files and take classes, buy books. And when you're faced with the schools, the principals, the IEP chairs, not even understanding the law or following the laws, or even following the IEP at all, it's really not just frustrating, it's defeating as a parent who spent so many years. I know many parents trying to learn the system. And then to be told to fill out this or that form to complain. It's really when we're told to work with the school, work with the county, so your child can have a good experience. But it's when you seem like you're the only one that knows the rules, I think that's really what Pamela said. That really needs to be at the forefront, because I find I've been dealing with my kids with IEP since they were in kindergarten. They're 6th grade, and their current school knows nothing, has violated every single part of the IEP. So it's frustrating that I take the time to educate myself, advocate, volunteer at the school, do all that's necessary, but the school and IEP chairs do not seem to understand, even when I do put the information in the emails that this is violating this part of the federal law, this is violating the IEP because it's written in the IEP. So that's my suggestion. It defeats the purpose of saying work together with the school when the folks that's supposed to at least have some education they're not educated. So if that could happen, whether it's classes, because there are classes for parents, there needs to be classes from the top down. That's starting with the principal to the vice principal, then down to the teachers and everyone else. So that is my recommendation. Thank you, Pamela, because I think that was a fantastic, and thank you for staying the course, because it is a hard and long battle to, ask for these things. But I think education from the top down is really crucial. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And related to what you were saying, I know that there was a comment in the chat that was a question about, and there's a lot in the chat, so I can't pull it up right now, but the parent was saying, the caregiver was saying, my child's IEP goals are asking for being able to cite claim and evidence and do reasoning, but that's not at the cognitive level where my child is. So there was a gap in an expectation that the parent was expressing. And so I wanted to elevate that comment, connect it to frustrations that families are experiencing. And then I see a comment in the chat around thinking outside of the box, which is what we want to create. We have more space for that. Is add more art to the experiences of students. So thank you to the person who wrote about art. We'll now hear from Tara Fuller, and someone else just put their hand down. You can raise it again, Eli. So Tara and then Eli, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just wondering if PGCPS collaborates with any other local school systems when determining what practices work best within special education, or when determining what management systems are used. And I guess if not, I guess that is my suggestion.
Thank you for putting that in the form of a suggestion. And I know that the team is resonating with what you said, and we'll have some responses afterwards, but that's a very strong suggestion. And Eli, who is not Eli.
Oh, hi, I'm Elise Thompson. And I want to say, first of all, I know that this work is very, very hard. My daughter has profound needs, and we have had a tremendous amount of support from the school system since infants and toddlers. And we've had excellent teams at both Kenmore and James H. Harrison, and we really are appreciative of all of the hard work. One instance that we've had recently is our daughter has been unable to attend. She had a significant gap in her ability to attend class because she did not have a private duty nurse. And she also was delayed in starting school at the beginning of the year because she didn't have a private duty nurse when she was first starting in the program at Kenmore. And we asked if we could attend as parents to take care of her medical needs so that she could continue to participate in class, and we could sit in the corner and do our work and be available if she needed medical care. And we were told that we could not. And, from the perspective of staffing levels, I think I would recommend that the school system be open to alternative approaches, such as allowing parents to come in when they can, if it means that it makes a difference in their ability to access school. And relatedly, one of my biggest complaints, my daughter had COVID at the beginning of the year. She tested negative. She was healthy and ready to go back to school, but couldn't because the school's COVID policy was probably a couple of years out of date. And, my child was not capable of keeping on a mask. And I felt like that specifically limited her ability. She was not allowed to be in school for 10 days, 10 school days. And okay, my husband is talking in the corner and distracting me. But she wasn't able to attend school, and that was education that she missed out on. And we happened to have backup care, so we weren't personally screwed that bad. But our daughter loves school, and she's in the right environment for her and getting the supports that she needs. But I would recommend that the school system reconsider the existing COVID policy so that people are not unnecessarily kept out of school because their disability precludes them from wearing a mask all day. But also, thank you. I know you guys are working really hard. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the suggestion around policies, making sure that everybody's aware that times are changing and that we need to reflect on them. So I'm not seeing a lot of hands up right now, but I am seeing some items in the chat. And I'll be very transparent as I am as a facilitator because there's a lot in the chat. I don't mean to skip what anybody is saying, and I'm not trying to prioritize something as being more important than something else. So to my colleagues, if there's something that I haven't raised that you see that I need to raise, please go ahead and support me in doing so. And as you're doing that, Crystal has a hand up, so we'll give Crystal the floor.
Yeah, so I made the comment about IEP goals that do not match the instructional functional level of the students. I'm a SPED teacher, so when I get IEPs coming to me and I pre-assess the kids and I see that they're at a pre-K level, but the IEPs coming from their base school, as I typed in the chat, has them doing claim evidence reasoning, has them writing paragraphs, which they can barely write words outside of their name, or even doing math computations, like they might be taking a math class, but the goal has them doing what helps them access the curriculum, but they can't do basic math calculations. So my question is, why are IEP teams creating goals that don't match the students' individual needs? Just because the goal is to give them access to the curriculum, they can get that during the time. But if we're focusing on students' individual needs, why are we not targeting that during the IEP, as opposed to trying to focus on something that is not feasible, and then we'll have to revamp the IEP all over again? And I'm sorry, I'm losing my thought, but the goals don't make sense that's being created for the students' individual needs. So therefore, it's not going to be adhered to. So how can we create goals that actually mirror the students' needs if they're far exceeding their capabilities?
Thank you for sharing that. And I didn't see any evidence that you actually lost your thought. So you put it out there very clearly. And I know that the team heard it. So team members, was there anything in the chat that you saw that you wanted to elevate for the conversation?
Yes, I see 2 comments.
Thank you.
Or suggestions. One, more thinking outside of the box, using more art. Art crosses all contents of the curriculum. Another suggestion, I would love to see PGCPS actually do their due diligence to fix issues found in a state complaint. Follow up with these schools that have compliance issues and hold them accountable. Create an action plan, do check-ins throughout the year to make sure the same issues are not happening. If you're saying that staff aren't understanding the law in the IEP and there's a problem, provide better training to those schools.
Thank you so much. And I do see Sarah's comments. That's one of the last comments in the chat. It would be very helpful if PGCPS would publish to a special education page the approved Tier 3 interventions for math and reading. Other districts do this, and this information would level the playing field for parents who want to be an equal member in the IEP team, but are not familiar with them ahead of the meeting. So recommendations that I do want to elevate, and I know Sheila Jackson is here, who does a lot of our work with family engagement, Dr. Jackson, is how can we as a system better prepare parents to engage meaningfully in the IEP meeting process so that they're coming to the table with as much information as possible. We have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we give Lisa Wilson the floor.
Greetings to all. I'm coming from the perspective of parent engagement. IDEA strongly supports the parents' rights to be involved in special education. And almost 30 years of research and experience has demonstrated that the education of children with disabilities can be made more effective by strengthening the role and responsibility of parents and ensuring that families have meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their children at school and at home. And I'm hoping that PG County is going to take a hard look at revising the classroom observation and participation for parents. I think that if you look at it through the prism, that we are allowed to go and get fingerprinted and pay $70, and then attend and participate in field trips, which can take 2, 3, 4, or 5 hours, but yet we're only relegated to 30 minutes for a classroom observation. And some of our children have IEPs that are up to 47, 57 pages. It's very difficult for a parent to advocate in 30 minutes when they're trying to look at the document and then also complete the observation. And I just want to say parental rights of participation can be summarized as parents have the right to participate in meetings related to the evaluation, identification, and education placement of their child. Parents have the right to participate in meetings related to the provision of a free and appropriate public education for their children. Parents are entitled to be members of any group that decides what their child with a disability is and whatever eligibility criteria is going to be discussed. And so I'm coming from the perspective that we have to empower parents to participate and be advocates, but we also have to create avenues of education because many parents do not understand this complex process that is absolutely controlled by the IEP team. When parents are an equal and legal member of the team. Thank you.
No, thank you, Lisa, for putting everything that you put out there. The work doesn't happen without parents and caregivers having as much power as possible, and because they know their children the best. So thank you for closing us up with those really strong remarks. I know that there's a lot here that I'm looking at in the chat still.
I see one recommendation that I wanted to elevate.
Okay.
And other colleagues from Prince George's County Department of Special Ed, if you see others, please elevate. There is a recommendation that Prince George's County consider IEP facilitators. There's too much work being done, and other districts do utilize IEP facilitators.
Thank you so much. And I know in that same comment, there was this idea that, and I hope I'm paraphrasing it correctly, that we need to make sure that our school-based staff and teachers are spending their time doing the core work, and that sometimes the paperwork is a bit much. And if we can think outside of the box around ways to kind of streamline some things. So with that, I want to give a sincere thank you to everyone who shared their experiences, their suggestions and recommendations around how we can do better in PGCPS. We're about to move into a moment of reflection where the reflection prompt really is, and it's on the next slide, is based on the feedback, comments, and recommendations that you heard today. What is one thing that resonated with you? And so in the consultancy protocol, this is how this normally works. The listening team, which would be the PGCPS staff, has an opportunity to reflect back on what they heard from you as you were sharing your ideas and asking your questions. So I'm going to ask for my PGCPS team members who have their backgrounds up, and we have board members who are here who can participate as well, school board members and SECAC board members. I would like for you all to take a moment to share one thing that's resonating with you, and know that more next steps are coming to you all from us as we do more and deeper reflection about all of the suggestions that you had tonight. I'll go ahead and start by modeling one reflection that I am having that resonated with me today. And that's coming from some of the people who commented in the chat and what I heard from our families. PGCPS is working hard and doing a lot of work in a lot of instances. And still, what we're doing is insufficient to meet the needs of many of our students and families. And in too many cases, there is disrespect that is happening. And there are areas to improve in our system so that we have more respectful relationships. And that is what I am sitting with today. And so with that, I'm going to open the floor for the rest of my colleagues to share their reflection.
Thanks, David. I'll go ahead and follow you. I think if I may, Ms. Perry, I think that the thing that resonated with me being a county employee for 30 years, being a resident and having a 23-year-old and 25-year-old who graduated after attending PGCPS schools for their entire careers. The thing that resonates with me, Mrs. Perry, was your call for all to remember your why. And I think that's important because that's how I walk out the door every day, remembering my why, remembering my own 2 kids who are now adults. I think it centers us and grounds us. And I want to start by saying, you know, for me, for our district, for our community, because that's what this really is to me. It's not a separation of parents, because I'm a parent. It's not a separation of employees, because I'm a resident. And it becomes one for all us to remember our why, which is to leave it a little bit better than when we arrived. And so, Mrs. Perry, thank you for that comment.
I wanted to add to that, Keith. We're Keith and Keith, so you can remember Blackson and Marston, but we often joke about that. But, you know, again, this is my first time participating in a forum like this with the community. And so I do appreciate the invitation and the ability to hear some of the concerns that are coming from our community. I do want to say from my perspective, we are definitely dedicated to listening to you as a department and looking at your feedback to see ways we can continuously improve. And this is definitely a challenging environment, as we all know, currently in education with the vacancies and finding teachers and recruiting in school buildings. So we value and appreciate your partnership. And again, I appreciate the feedback that was shared tonight. And it definitely gives us as leaders an opportunity to go back and reflect ourselves on what was stated tonight to look to continuously improve as a district, as a department.
Michelle Tucker.
Yeah, and thank you, David, for calling on me. And I'll say for everyone on the line, I'm going to reflect 2 different ways. I'm going to first reflect as an employee, because with the work that we do within our office with behavior and training, I definitely made notes of some things that I wanted to go back and hearing from the parents that I wanted to go back and take a look at our training modules to make sure that not only are we incorporating, intentionally naming what we're incorporating in terms of strategies to align with some of the suggestions we heard tonight, but also making sure that that competency piece and that accountability piece is built into all of the trainings that we offer when it comes to behavior strategies and supporting students with behavior support needs. But as a parent, as I was sitting here and sometimes in my engagement in these type of forums, I have to balance myself from an employee to a parent, because I have 5 children. 3 graduated from Prince George's County Public Schools. I have 2 middle schoolers, and out of my 5 children, 2 of them had IEPs. And being a certified special educator and working in Prince George's County for now 21 years, I think, yeah, something like that. Not every IEP did I see eye to eye with the folks sitting across the table from me. And not in every IEP did I feel as though policies, or even out, and I'll say out, even in the IEP meeting or just outside with my children who didn't have IEPs, it wasn't circumstance where I felt that every time that the policies were being followed either. So my contribution in the chat, for some of you will see that, I went and looked at the administrative procedures because they're there. And as employees, we're supposed to follow them. And sometimes people know about them and read them, and sometimes people don't. And in my correspondence with schools, when I feel like they're not, then I'm sharing the administrative procedure with them. I'm letting that do the, I'm not someone who argues, but I'm letting that do the advocating for me and my child. And that's why I encourage parents to do, and when I'm in other parent forums, to do that. They're there, and we're all supposed to be held accountable to them. And you let those documents help you in your advocacy for your children, so that you are sharing with them. And when you're saying, hey, no, I'm not going to pick my child up from school today because they're not being suspended, that can help start that conversation of, well, what else can we do? Because that's not the end all be all answer for my child. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. So I'm gonna mute my mic back and let somebody else share.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And we have about 5 more minutes to hear reflections from the team. Including Board of Education members. So feel free to come off of mute whenever you feel so moved. Board Member Boozer Strother.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reese. So my reflections are multiple. First, gratitude to everyone in this room for being here. I see, parents and educators and leaders of the system and board members willing to be in this hard conversation together. And I know how tough it is because of being a parent and a board member for the last 6 years. I'm in this room with parents who are still, who I know are still bringing some of the same issues you shared with me 6 years ago. And so accountability as a board member around continuing this work and this advocacy, that we will resolve this. But I also, want to say the gratitude around to Ms. Bowman. Ms. Bowman is the only high-level employee in PGCPS required by state law to have monthly meetings with parents like this and to prepare for them and to have her staff prepare. And that's not lost on me as a board member of that extra accountability. So I do want to acknowledge that. And I do feel like as a board member, I hear a lot of the private stories of families, and I've helped with solutions as best I can individually. And there does feel like sort of the lid is blown off a lot of what has been some of the stuff that's been hard to talk about. And it's been right here in the chat, and it's been right here in the conversations, that it's now called out way more publicly. That gives us an opportunity to do deeper work. And I want to thank everyone for that honesty and transparency, and the fact that, as I noted, we have educators speaking their truth. I see that we had a principal. Maybe we probably have more school leaders in the room whose names I'm not familiar with, that we're all in this together. And I hope we can go forward with that spirit, that we are doing this together, because we really have, I'm not sure we could get more transparent than where we've been tonight with what we've shared and what we're hearing and what we know we need to work on. So I know I want to continue to make that commitment to everyone as a Board of Education member. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. And we want to open the space up for another moment or two for colleagues to speak. Michelle, the other Michelle, lots of Michelles and Keiths.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your honesty and transparency and taking time to join us tonight to help us be thought process partners as we move forward as a county and Department of Special Education to improve outcomes for our students with disabilities. One of the things that I've heard is a need for stronger communication and collaboration with our parents, and we look forward to doing that throughout this year and in the upcoming school year.
Thank you. And Trinell, you can close us out before we get to the closing slides.
Thank you so much. I think as I reflected on the comments, both in the chat and what has been said out loud, is the two words that came to mind was rebuild trust. Acknowledging that there has been trust broken throughout the district in terms of parents trusting educators, administrators, central office staff to make the best decisions in the interest of their children. And so for me, it's about rebuilding the trust with our community, with our families. I hope you see, based on those key members that are here across multiple offices, our Board of Education members, that we are committed and joined to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. We are committed to this work. I just want to recognize several of the principals that joined, several of the educators that joined, several of our central office team members, both in the Department of Special Ed and out, that I hope that parents on this call in our community see that we are committed to improving it and to getting it right, and also improving and rebuilding trust. So again, thank you for your courageous, your candid, your brave feedback, and hold us accountable. I know it's not easy to sometimes to rehash what you've experienced, but we do appreciate you sharing that and the great recommendations and feedback that you gave to us tonight. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We appreciate, I really do. I'm not afraid of the hard conversations and hard dialogue, because that's one of the ways that we get better. And our staff really does appreciate the shout outs, Ms. Doyle. So when you talk about Beltsville, the positive things that are happening there, you can improve by focusing on the positive, but you could also improve by addressing the gaps and deficits that we have as a system. So all of it is appreciated. I don't know who I'm turning it over to next. Is it you, Ms. Janey?
I think so.
All right.
Excuse me. We definitely want to encourage everyone to complete the survey. So want to share that. And I don't know, Marcy, if you have some specific instructions around that. And then just talking about next steps. So Trinell talked about building trust. And I think that's so important. Part of building trust is making sure that we're reliable, right? So there's been some commitments made. There's been some follow-up commitments made, the follow-up to answer the questions that are in the chat, to continue to implement the action plan, to provide parents updates. So, definitely what I see is the Prince George's County team continuing to do that and continuing to work hard on the implementation issues. And I hope as parents, we continue to show up and continue to share our voice and share our concerns so that we can work together to come up with solutions for our children. So if we can go to the next slide, I think that gives some of the one before, right? That we're going to send the notes out. They'll be on the listserv. So I want to make a note about that. And someone even asked about that. Then the other thing, if we go to the next slide, Marcy, let's see. Our SECAC meetings that are coming up on February 25th, we're going to be talking about school transitions and resources for school transitions. We'll be having our next town hall meeting March 25th. We will in April be addressing autism and mental health awareness. And then we'll have our last town hall meeting on May 27th of 2025. So once again, I want to thank everybody for showing up this evening and the work that was done. If you are interested, the work is never ending. And if you're on the SECAC board, you are a parent or a caregiver that's volunteering your time. And we would like other parents to join us. If you're interested in doing that, please reach out to me directly. That's my email address. And we would love to have you. We would love to have your voice. We would love to have your ideas and also your support as we move forward. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to who? You, Trinell, on the steps to resolve concerns.
And Marcy's going to wrap us up from the
Okay.
Family Support Center.
Yep. I'm going to try to be quick about it because I know we're cutting into your evening. But we wanted to provide some quick steps to resolve concerns here. And you can see the steps here. I won't read through them all. And there is also a central office resolution contact list. We're really excited that within the past couple of weeks, we have released the Special Education Family Toolkit. It is a comprehensive toolkit for easily accessible information on policies, procedures, resources. You'll find links to federal and state laws and regulations and administrative procedures. So please check that out. It is also posted on our special education website. Throughout the presentation tonight in the town hall, you've seen us talk about the parent survey. We developed an individualized education program parent satisfaction survey to gather feedback. We have 715-ish responses strong now that we are working to kind of disaggregate that data. But the link in the QR code is here. You should be receiving this link after every single IEP team meeting. And that is also posted on our website as well. And we just want to thank you again. I want to echo everyone. I know these are hard conversations, and we want to thank you for your honesty and your transparency and sharing in this collaborative approach with us. And we hope everyone has a wonderful night.